One day, the two people who first knew your name may no longer answer when you call them. The house remains, their belongings remain, their memories remain. But where do your mother and father go when the body becomes silent? Ancient Vedic teachings do not describe death as the destruction of the deepest self. They speak of a journey beyond the visible world, of ancestors, karma, sacred remembrance, and a path every embodied being must eventually walk. And what they reveal about your parents after death may completely change the way you understand losing them. Stay until the end, because the final teaching is not only about where your mother and father may go after death, it is about what they leave alive inside you long after they are gone. If these ancient teachings matter to you, subscribe to Akashic Vedas and let us enter this mystery together. 1. Your mother and father are more than the bodies you know. There is a moment every child fears, no matter how old they become. The moment when the two people who once seemed permanent suddenly become fragile, silent, or absent. You may have spent years believing your mother would always answer your call, and your father would always exist somewhere in the background of your life. Yet death arrives and forces the mind to confront a question it never wanted to ask. If the body is gone, has the person truly disappeared? The Vedic answer begins by breaking the deepest illusion we carry about those we love. Your mother is not only the face you remember, and your father is not only the body that once walked through the house. The body is the visible form through which you knew them, but it is not the totality of who they are. It grows, changes, becomes tired, becomes old, and one day can no longer continue. Yet the ancient spiritual teachings distinguish this changing body from the deeper conscious principle known as the Atman, the inner self that is not reduced to flesh alone. This matters because grief sees only what has stopped. The eyes no longer open, the hands no longer move, the familiar voice no longer calls your name. The place where they used to sit becomes painfully empty, and because every physical sign has disappeared, the mind concludes that the person has vanished into nothingness. But Vedic philosophy asks you to look deeper and recognize that the end of bodily activity is not the same as the destruction of the deepest self. Think about your mother for a moment. Before you ever understood language, her presence had already entered your life. She may have held you before you could remember being held, worried about you before you understood worry, fed you before you understood hunger, and carried years of memories you may never fully know. Now think about your father. Perhaps he worked while you slept, carried burdens he never explained, corrected you when you disliked being corrected, or quietly shaped the way you learned to stand in the world. To reduce either of them to the body seen at death would be to reduce an entire lifetime to its final physical condition. The Vedic vision refuses that reduction. It says that the body is temporary, while the deeper journey of consciousness is larger than one physical form. Your parents entered this world through bodies, performed their duties through bodies, loved through bodies, suffered through bodies, and eventually left those bodies when they could no longer continue. This does not mean their physical existence was unimportant. It means the physical existence was one chapter in a larger mystery. And this is where the teaching becomes deeply personal, because while your parents are alive, you often see them only through the role they play in your own life. You think of my mother and my father, but spiritually they are also individual souls with their own karma, desires, duties, fears, attachments, and inner journey. They existed before you knew them as parents, and according to the ancient understanding, their deepest identity cannot be completely contained inside the family role through which you knew them. This can be difficult to accept because children naturally feel that parents belong to them. Even at 40, 50, or 60 years old, a person may still feel like a child when a mother becomes ill or a father grows weak. Some part of the heart says, "You cannot leave because you are my mother," or "You cannot go because I still need you as my father." But spiritual wisdom reminds us that love does not create ownership. A parent may be entrusted to your life for decades, yet no human relationship can permanently command another being to remain embodied forever. The pain of losing parents often comes from this collision between love and impermanence. You do not only lose a person, you lose a structure that quietly supported your identity. The one who remembered your childhood is gone. The one you wanted to call after good news is gone. The one whose existence made the world feel more familiar is gone. Suddenly the house may feel different, festivals may feel different, and even your own age may feel different because there is no longer someone above you in the family in the same way. But the Vedic teaching does not ask you to deny this pain. It asks you to interpret it differently. Instead of saying, "they have become nothing," it asks you to consider, "the physical form through which I knew them has ended, but the deeper self is not described as being destroyed with the body." That difference can completely change grief. The body may no longer answer, but the life they lived has already entered you in countless ways. Your mother may be present in the compassion you learned from her. Your father may be present in the courage he taught you. Their habits, words, warnings, sacrifices, mistakes, prayers, and love may already be woven into the person you have become. Even before we ask where the soul goes after death, we can see that a human being does not disappear cleanly from the world the moment the body stops. Their influence remains. Their karma has shaped consequences. Their presence has altered other lives. Their memory continues. And perhaps this is the first protection against the deepest despair of loss. Understanding that death changes the form of a relationship, but it does not make the entire relationship meaningless. Your mother is no longer only the body you cannot touch. Your father is no longer only the voice you cannot hear. They have crossed from daily physical presence into memory, ancestry, consequence, and according to Vedic thought, a continued spiritual journey beyond the body. This is why the ancient tradition treats death as a transition rather than a simple disappearance. The final rites are performed with seriousness because the person is understood as more than discarded matter. The family does not merely close a chapter. It acknowledges that the one who has departed is moving into a condition the living cannot physically follow. And once you understand this, one question naturally rises above all the others. If your mother and father are not destroyed when the body ends, where do they go next? That is where the ancient path toward Yama, the Pitrs, and the realm of the ancestors begins. Lesson 2. The ancient path toward Yama and the ancestors. If your mother or father does not simply vanish with the body, then the next question becomes unavoidable. Where does the soul go after death? The ancient Vedic vision does not answer with an image of meaningless darkness. It speaks instead of a path, a journey, and a movement toward those who have gone before. In the funeral hymns of the Rig Veda, the departed is directed toward Yama and toward the Pitrs, the ancestors. This is one of the oldest and most powerful images of death in Vedic thought, because it presents death not as complete destruction, but as a transition into another condition of existence. The person leaves the visible world, yet does not become spiritually meaningless. Think about what this means when the person who dies is your mother or father. To you, your mother may have been the center of the home, the one whose voice you associated with comfort, care, correction, and belonging. Your father may have been the person whose presence gave the family structure, whose advice shaped your decisions, or whose sacrifices you understood only after growing older. But death reveals that they were also part of something larger than one household. They belonged to a lineage that existed before you were born, and that reaches backward through generations you may never have known. Your mother had a mother. Your father had a father. They too had parents, and those parents had parents before them. The line stretches backward so far that most names disappear from family memory, yet the Vedic concept of the ancestors reminds us that human life is never isolated. We stand in the middle of a stream that began before us and will continue after us. When a parent dies, therefore, something profound happens in the family. The person you knew simply as mother or father begins moving toward another identity within memory and tradition, ancestor. This does not happen emotionally in one day. For a long time, they may still feel too close, too familiar, too recently present to imagine them as part of some distant ancestral realm. You still remember what they wore yesterday, where they sat, what they said, how they looked when they were tired, and perhaps even the last thing you spoke about together. The word ancestor may sound ancient and distant, while your grief feels immediate and personal. Yet time slowly reveals what the ancient tradition already understands. Every parent eventually becomes one of those who came before. Every child eventually stands where their parents once stood. And one day, the children themselves become ancestors to another generation. This is not meant to make life feel cold. It is meant to make life sacred. The fact that your mother and father cannot remain physically forever does not reduce their importance. It increases the value of the years in which their presence was available to you. The Vedic imagery of Yama becomes important here because Yama is connected with the order of mortality and the path of the departed. In later popular imagination, people sometimes reduce Yama only to a terrifying lord of death, but the older Vedic picture is more profound. Yama is associated with the realm of those who have already gone before, with the ancient road that every embodied being must eventually face. This means that when death enters your family, your mother or father is not entering a road invented only for them. They are entering a road humanity has walked from the beginning. Countless mothers have left children behind. Countless fathers have taken their final breath while someone stood nearby, wishing for one more conversation. Countless sons and daughters have watched the people who raised them become silent. And every generation has had to ask the same question: where did they go? The Vedic response places that grief inside a larger cosmic order. The soul continues. The ancestors matter. The journey matters, and the living must learn to perform their part without pretending they can control what lies beyond the boundary of death. This is why the final rites are so significant. The body is not treated like meaningless matter that simply needs to be removed. Sacred fire, prayer, offerings, remembrance, and the participation of family create a passage from ordinary relationship into sacred farewell. The family is acknowledging that something has changed forever. While your mother was alive, perhaps you served her food. After death, you offer remembrance. While your father was alive, perhaps you brought him water. After death, sacred water may become part of ancestral rites. While they were alive, your love moved through physical acts of care. After death, love must learn to move through reverence, prayer, duty, and memory. That transformation can be incredibly painful because the heart continues wanting to serve the person physically. You may still wake with the instinct to call them. You may prepare something they liked and suddenly realize there is no one to give it to. You may hear good news and think, I need to tell my father before the truth returns. You may enter a festival and feel the absence of your mother more strongly than ever. In those moments, the idea of the ancestors becomes more than philosophy. It becomes a new way of holding the relationship. You are no longer asking the parent to remain exactly as they were. You begin learning to honor them in the form the relationship now permits. This is why remembrance is so powerful. A parent can leave the physical world and still remain part of the moral and spiritual structure of the family. Their advice can survive them. Their prayers can survive them. Their mistakes can become lessons. Their sacrifices can become strength. Their values can continue through children and grandchildren. In this sense, the journey of the parent moves in two directions at once. One direction belongs to the soul and its path beyond the body. The other belongs to the family and the consequences of the life that parent already lived. Your mother may no longer be physically present, but the way she loved may now live inside you. Your father may no longer speak, but the discipline he taught you may still guide your decisions. The ancestor is gone from ordinary sight. yet the influence remains active. This is where grief begins to deepen into wisdom. At first, you may ask only, "Where did my mother go?" Or, "Where did my father go?" Later, another question begins to appear. What did they leave inside me before they went? That second question is just as important as the first, because the Vedic path is not only about discovering where the departed goes, it is also about understanding what responsibility remains with the living. You may not be able to walk beside your parents beyond death. You may not know every detail of the realm they enter. You may not understand every mystery connected with Yama, the Pitrs, or the soul's onward journey. But you can decide what happens to the inheritance they placed inside you. You can preserve what was noble. You can heal what was painful. You can continue what was worthy. You can refuse to let their entire life be reduced to the day they died. And this is where the next lesson becomes even more powerful, because your mother and father do not move beyond death only as parents. According to Vedic thought, they also carry something deeply personal with them, their own karma. Lesson 3. Your mother and father carry their own karma beyond death. When a mother or father dies, the child often thinks only in terms of the relationship that has been lost. The heart says, "My mother is gone," or "My father is gone," because that is the role through which you knew them most deeply. But Vedic thought asks you to look beyond that relationship and remember something far greater. Before they were your parents, they were individual souls with their own journey, their own actions, their own desires, their own duties, and their own karma. This changes the way we understand what happens after death, because your mother does not leave the body carrying only the identity of mother, and your father does not continue only as father. Those names describe what they were to you, but spiritually, they are far larger than the roles they played inside one family. They came into this life carrying tendencies, responsibilities, strengths, weaknesses, attachments, and choices of their own, and according to the broader Vedic tradition, what continues after death is connected not merely to how much the family loved them, but also to what they themselves became through the life they lived. This is where karma becomes one of the most powerful and misunderstood ideas in the entire teaching. Karma does not mean that every painful event can be simplistically explained by saying, "This happened because of something bad." It is not a weapon for judging the dead, and it should never be used to insult a grieving family by pretending we can see every hidden cause behind another person's death. Karma is far more subtle. It refers to the moral and spiritual consequences of action, intention, habit, and inner development, and it reminds us that every being participates in shaping the path of consciousness through the way life is lived. Think about your parents as complete human beings rather than only as the people who raised you. Your mother may have spent years caring for everyone while hiding her own fears. Your father may have carried responsibilities he rarely spoke about. They may have performed acts of kindness nobody in the family ever saw. They may have carried regret. They may have made mistakes. They may have overcome temptations. They may have hurt people and later changed. They may have prayed in silence. They may have struggled with desires you never knew existed. A child sees only part of a parent's life. Karma belongs to the whole. That is why we should be extremely careful about pretending we know exactly what happens to a particular mother or father after death. Love gives us closeness, but it does not give us complete knowledge of another soul. You may know how your father treated you, but not every battle he fought within himself. You may know how your mother cared for the family, but not every thought that passed through her heart. You may remember their failures, but not every act of goodness performed when nobody was watching. The deeper laws of existence are not limited to the small window through which one family member sees another, and this teaching can actually bring relief to a grieving child, because after a parent dies, guilt often becomes enormous. The mind begins searching backward. Why did I not visit more? Why did I argue with her that day? Why did I ignore his advice? Why did I not notice how tired they were? Why did I not say thank you enough? Grief can take one imperfect moment and make it feel larger than an entire lifetime. You may have loved your mother for 40 years, yet one argument from the final month becomes the only thing you can remember. You may have respected your father your entire life, yet one phone call you failed to answer begins haunting you as though it erased everything that came before. This is where the idea of karma should create perspective rather than fear. Your parents' entire spiritual journey is not defined by one mistake you made. You were part of their life, sometimes a very important part, but you were not the sole creator of their destiny. They carried their own karma. You carry yours. This does not remove responsibility. If you treated them badly, learn from it. If there is regret, let it humble you. If you failed to express love, become more expressive with the people who are still alive. But do not turn remorse into the belief that you now control the entire fate of the departed soul. That is another form of ego, even though it appears as guilt. Sometimes people punish themselves for years after a parent dies because self-punishment feels like loyalty. They think, if I stop blaming myself, maybe it means I did not care enough. But suffering endlessly cannot go backward and repair yesterday. Transformation can. If you regret speaking harshly to your mother, speak more gently to those around you now. If you regret not spending enough time with your father, stop postponing time with the people who remain. If your parents taught you something you ignored while they were alive, perhaps honoring that teaching now is more meaningful than repeatedly condemning yourself for not understanding it sooner. Then regret becomes wisdom, and wisdom becomes part of your own karma. This is one of the deepest ways death teaches the living. The departed soul carries the consequences of its life, but the family also creates new karma through the way it responds to the loss. Grief can produce anger or compassion. Loss can divide siblings or bring them closer. Regret can destroy someone or transform them. Death closes one person's chapter while opening a severe spiritual test for those who remain. This is why the question is not only, what karma did my parents carry after death? Another question must also be asked, what karma am I creating now through the way I respond to their death? That question is powerful because grief can make us feel completely powerless. Yet this reminds us that we still have choices. You cannot undo the death. You cannot force the soul to return. You cannot rewrite every unfinished conversation. But you can decide whether the loss makes you more conscious or more bitter. You can decide whether your mother's death makes you appreciate the living mothers around you. You can decide whether your father's death makes you finally understand sacrifice. You can decide whether the family becomes more united or more divided. You can decide whether remembrance becomes gratitude or permanent anger against life. The ancient teaching of karma always returns responsibility to the individual. Your parents' journey is theirs. Your response is yours. This also means that two people from the same family can experience the death of the same parent in completely different ways. One child becomes angry with life, another becomes more spiritual. One sibling becomes obsessed with property. Another begins serving the poor in the parent's memory. One person spends years saying, "Why did this happen to me?" Another eventually asks, "What must I learn now that it has happened?" The death was the same. The karma created afterward is different. This is why ancient wisdom never allows grief to remain only emotion. Emotion must eventually become action. Action becomes habit. Habit becomes character. And character shapes the direction of life. If your mother or father is gone, perhaps one of the greatest honors you can offer is to allow their death to produce something noble within you. Not because their death was desirable, not because suffering must be romanticized, but because once something cannot be changed, the only remaining power is what you become because of it. This is also where the teaching becomes more compassionate toward imperfect parents. Not every mother was gentle. Not every father was wise. Some children carry painful memories. Some families contain abandonment, anger, manipulation, neglect, or wounds that remained unresolved until death. When such a parent dies, the child may feel confused because society expects pure sadness, while the heart may contain sadness, anger, relief, guilt, love, and resentment all at the same time. Vedic wisdom does not require you to lie about the relationship. Karma belongs to truth, not performance. You do not have to pretend your father was perfect simply because he died. You do not have to erase the wounds caused by your mother in order to perform remembrance with dignity. You can acknowledge what was good, acknowledge what was painful, and refuse to let either become the complete story. Perhaps part of your own dharma is to stop repeating the pattern. If your father never learned how to express love, you can express it. If your mother lived in fear, you can develop courage. If anger passed through generations, you can become the person who refuses to pass it further. Then even a painful family inheritance becomes a place of transformation. And this is one of the most powerful ways karma works across generations, not as a simple punishment, but as a chain of causes that awareness can either continue or interrupt. Your parents gave you more than a body. They gave you patterns. Some deserve to be preserved. Some deserve to be healed. The wise child learns the difference. And when a parent dies, this responsibility becomes even clearer because you can no longer wait for them to change first. The work is now in your hands. Your mother and father have completed the portion of earthly life that belonged to them. You still have time. That time is your responsibility. So when you ask what happens to your parents after death, remember this ancient principle. Their path is not decided merely by how intensely you grieve them. Their journey is connected with the deeper pattern of their own being, their karma, and the spiritual laws that lie beyond ordinary sight. You can honor them, you can pray, you can remember, you can perform sacred duties, but you cannot possess the soul's destiny. And perhaps understanding this is one of the first ways grief becomes lighter. You stop carrying a burden that was never completely yours. You stop believing that one mistake from you determines everything about them. You begin trusting that the life they lived was larger than the final day, and larger than your own memories of it. Then love becomes humbler. Instead of saying, "I must control what happens to you even after death," it begins saying, "I honor your journey, even where I cannot follow or understand it." But if each soul carries its own karma, another mystery immediately appears. Why then have children been taught for generations to offer water, food, prayer, Shraddha, and remembrance for departed parents? If you cannot control your mother's or father's destiny, why do the actions of the living still matter after they are gone? That is where the next lesson opens one of the most sacred dimensions of the relationship between children and ancestors. Lesson 4. Why children still honor their parents after death. If your mother and father carry their own karma, then a difficult question naturally appears. If their soul follows its own path, why have children been taught for generations to perform remembrance, offer water, prepare sacred food, pray, give charity, and honor departed parents through ancestral rites? The answer reveals something beautiful about the relationship between karma and love. Vedic and later Hindu traditions do not teach that a child can simply erase or replace the karma of a parent, yet they also do not treat the bond between generations as meaningless once the body is gone. The relationship changes, but gratitude, duty, remembrance, and reverence continue to matter. While your parents were alive, your love had a physical direction. You could serve them directly. You could bring your mother food, help your father when he was weak, sit beside them during illness, listen to their concerns, support them, touch their feet, ask for blessings, or simply spend time in their presence. These ordinary acts may have seemed small while life was moving quickly, but after death, you suddenly understand how precious they were. Then the physical opportunity ends. The heart still wants to give, but there is no body left to receive what you want to give. This is one reason ancestral remembrance becomes so powerful. It gives love a new form. Instead of saying, "I can do nothing now," the child learns to say, "I can still honor." That difference matters. Grief becomes unbearable when it feels completely powerless. You want to serve your mother one more time, but you cannot. You want to bring your father one more glass of water, but the moment has passed. Sacred remembrance does not pretend that death has not happened. It accepts that direct service has ended and transforms that same love into prayer, gratitude, offerings, charity, and dharma. This is the deeper spirit behind Shraddha. The outer ritual matters within tradition, but the inner quality matters too. Shraddha is connected with sincerity, reverence, and faith. It reminds the living that ancestry is not merely a biological fact. It is a debt of gratitude. You did not create yourself. Your body came through generations. The language you speak came through generations. The family traditions you inherited came through generations. The sacrifices that made your life possible often began long before you were old enough to understand them. Your mother and father stand closest to you in that chain. Perhaps your mother lost sleep caring for you when you were too young to remember. Perhaps your father carried financial pressure without telling you because he did not want you to feel afraid. Perhaps neither was perfect. Perhaps they made mistakes. But your existence is still connected with theirs in a way no other ordinary relationship can completely duplicate. This is why gratitude after death can become sacred. When water is offered in remembrance, it can carry the meaning, "I remember where I came from." When food is offered, the heart can remember how many times a parent once fed the child. When charity is performed in their memory, grief is transformed into goodness. And this transformation is powerful because love that becomes trapped inside grief slowly turns inward and begins consuming the person who carries it. Love that becomes service moves outward again. Imagine a daughter who loses her mother. For months, every memory hurts. She remembers the kitchen, the voice calling her name, the small habits she used to ignore. Then one day she prepares food and gives it to someone hungry in her mother's memory. Something changes. Her mother is still gone. The grief is still real, but the love has moved. Instead of circling endlessly around absence, it has created kindness in another life. Now imagine a son remembering his father by helping someone who cannot afford something important because generosity was one of the father's strongest qualities. The father cannot physically perform that act anymore, yet something he planted in his son is still producing goodness. This is how the influence of a parent can continue, not by denying death, by allowing what was good in them to travel through you. And perhaps this is one of the deepest meanings of honoring ancestors. Your parents become part of what you carry forward. Their body may return to the elements, but their values can continue through your choices. Their voice may become silent, but a lesson they repeated can still shape the way you raise your own children. Their hands may no longer work, but what those hands built can continue supporting a family. Their life can still have consequences long after their physical presence ends. This is why remembrance should not be limited to sorrow. If every time you think about your mother you remember only the day she died, then death has become larger than her entire life. If every time you think about your father you see only his final illness, then the last chapter has swallowed everything that came before it. Sacred remembrance tries to restore the whole person. Remember the ordinary days. Remember the sacrifices you did not understand at the time. Remember their weaknesses too, because true remembrance does not require turning the dead into perfect beings. Remember what they taught you. Remember what you need to heal. Remember what should continue. And then ask one powerful question. What can become better in this world because my mother or father once lived? That question can completely change grief. If your mother was compassionate, become more compassionate. If your father valued responsibility, become more responsible. If they cared for relatives, continue that care. If they made serious mistakes, let your life become the place where those mistakes stop repeating. Even healing a harmful family pattern can become a form of ancestral honor. Suppose your father carried anger that harmed the family. You do not honor him by repeating that anger. You may honor the deeper possibilities of the family by becoming the generation that ends it. Suppose your mother lived with fear and never pursued the life she wanted. You do not honor her by inheriting the same fear without question. Perhaps you honor her by finding the courage she wished she had. This where ancestral remembrance becomes more than looking backward. It becomes responsibility toward the future. You receive something from your parents, and then you decide what form it will take in the next generation. That is sacred work. And this is also why family unity after the death of parents matters so much. Death sometimes does something tragic to families. Instead of becoming closer, siblings begin fighting. Property becomes more important than memory. Old jealousies return. People argue over who cared more, who deserves more, who performed the correct ritual, or who was the better child. Then grief becomes another source of division. You ask yourself what that means. A mother spends decades trying to keep her children connected, and after she dies, they stop speaking. A father works his entire life to build something for the family, and after his death, that same inheritance becomes the reason the family breaks apart. If honoring parents means anything, surely it must include understanding the values they hoped would survive them. Sometimes the greatest offering is not another flower. It is one sibling forgiving another. Sometimes the greatest ancestral duty is not simply performing a ritual correctly, it is refusing to destroy the family through pride. This does not mean every conflict should be ignored. Some wounds are serious and boundaries may be necessary, but death reveals how temporary everything is, and it makes many smaller conflicts look painfully foolish. The person you refuse to speak to today may one day become the person whose photograph you sit beside tomorrow. This is one of the harsh lessons death teaches. Time is not guaranteed. Therefore, honoring departed parents should make us more conscious of the living family that remains. If your mother is gone, care for the people she loved. If your father is gone, protect what was genuinely valuable in what he built. Do not allow their absence to become the beginning of greater destruction. Allow it, if possible, to become the beginning of deeper awareness. This is how grief becomes Dharma. The child moves from asking, "Why did this happen to us?" toward asking, "What is now required of me?" Perhaps a younger sibling needs guidance. Perhaps an aging surviving parent needs care. Perhaps the family needs someone to become steady. Perhaps the traditions need to be preserved. Perhaps wounds need to be healed. Death does not only remove a person, it redistributes responsibility. Roles change. The child who was always protected may now need to protect others. The sibling who relied on the father may now have to become strong. The daughter who depended on her mother's emotional support may now discover that younger family members depend on her. This transition can be painful, but it is part of what the living must carry. And it brings us back to the original question: why honor your parents after death if their soul carries its own karma? Because remembrance is not about controlling their destiny. It is about fulfilling your relationship with gratitude and transforming what remains inside you. You cannot command the invisible journey of your mother. You cannot bargain with the cosmic path of your father, but you can decide whether their memory produces wisdom or bitterness. You can decide whether their life continues creating kindness. You can decide whether their sacrifices are wasted. You can decide whether the family becomes more conscious because they were here. This is your part. Their soul follows its path. You follow yours. And sacred remembrance becomes the place where those two paths still touch through gratitude. Perhaps that is why an offering made with sincerity can feel so different from grief without direction. Grief says, "I lost you." Remembrance says, "You mattered." Grief says, "There is nothing I can do." Dharma says, I can still live in a way that honors what you gave. Grief looks only at the empty chair. Wisdom looks at the life that once filled it. And eventually the child begins to understand that the greatest ritual may not end beside a sacred fire or river. It continues in daily life. Every time you speak with the patience your mother taught you, every time you act with the integrity your father valued, every time you stop a harmful family pattern, every time you care for someone they loved, every time you choose gratitude instead of resentment, the offering continues. But there is still one danger. Remembrance can remain sacred, or it can slowly turn into attachment. A child can honor a parent, or begin emotionally refusing to allow that parent to leave. And that is where the next lesson becomes even more important, because loving your mother and father after death does not mean holding their souls back through endless grief. Lesson 5. Loving your parents does not mean holding their souls back. There is a point in grief where love and attachment begin to look almost identical, and this is one of the most difficult places for a son or daughter to recognize, because when your mother or father dies, every instinct inside you wants to hold on more tightly. You remember their voice, their touch, the place where they sat, the little arguments that now seem meaningless, the questions you wish you had asked, and the ordinary moments you once assumed would repeat forever. The heart says, I am remembering them because I love them. But sometimes beneath that remembrance, another voice quietly begins saying, I refuse to accept that they have gone. And Vedic wisdom asks us to understand the difference between those two states. Love can remember without imprisoning, attachment cannot. Love says, you mattered to me and you always will. Attachment says, you must remain connected to me exactly as before, because I cannot accept life without you. This distinction is painful because attachment often disguises itself as devotion. A daughter may believe that if she stops crying every day, she is betraying her mother. A son may feel that smiling again means he has forgotten his father. Someone may refuse to move a parent's belongings because changing anything feels like admitting that the person will never return. Another may keep replaying the final day again and again because suffering feels like the last proof that the relationship was real. But the Vedic path repeatedly warns that attachment binds consciousness. It does not tell you to become cold. It does not tell you to stop loving. It does not tell you to erase your parents from your heart. It asks you to learn a harder form of love, one that can continue even after physical possession is no longer possible. When your parents were alive, love naturally moved through holding. You wanted them near, you wanted them safe, you wanted one more year, one more festival, one more conversation, one more ordinary morning. If your mother became ill, you wanted her to recover. If your father grew weak, you wanted strength to return. Every act of care was directed toward keeping them present in the world, because that was the duty of love, while life remained. But when death has already happened, the same instinct can become a source of suffering if it refuses to change. The person is no longer standing at the threshold between sickness and recovery. They have crossed the boundary. The body has completed its journey, and now love must learn another movement. Instead of pulling backward, it must begin blessing forward. This is where the teaching becomes extremely difficult, because no child wants to say go. The word feels wrong. For years, your mother may have been the one who asked where you were going, when you would return, whether you had eaten, whether you were safe. Your father may have been the one whose presence gave the home a sense of structure and stability. Even when you became independent, some part of you still knew that they existed somewhere in the world. Then one day, that certainty disappears, and the mind does not know what to do with the emptiness. It may continue expecting the sound of your mother's voice. You may wake from sleep convinced for 1 second that your father is still alive. You may see someone from behind who resembles him, and your heart suddenly races. You may pick up the phone before remembering there is no number that can reach where he has gone. These experiences are natural. They are part of the mind learning what the heart has not yet accepted. But over time, grief places a question before you. Will memory become a bridge to gratitude, or will it become a chain tying your entire life to the moment of loss? That choice does not happen in one day, and nobody should force it. The ancient path does not require artificial peace. Pretending not to hurt is not spiritual maturity. A person can sit calmly at a ritual while inwardly being completely shattered, and another can cry openly while slowly moving toward genuine acceptance. The external appearance is not the deepest measure. The question is what the grief is doing inside you. Is it gradually becoming softer? Is it teaching you anything? Is it allowing love to expand? Or is it demanding that you remain emotionally standing beside the funeral forever? This is where attachment becomes dangerous. When a parent dies, sometimes the child unconsciously makes a promise that was never spoken aloud. I will never be happy again. Why? Because happiness seems unfair. Your mother cannot enjoy another morning, so how can you? Your father cannot sit at another family gathering, so why should you laugh? Gone. So part of you believes that continuing fully would mean leaving them behind. But ask yourself something deeply uncomfortable. If your mother could stand before you for 1 minute, would she truly ask you to destroy the rest of your life because hers ended? If your father spent decades trying to make you stronger, would he want his death to become the reason you permanently collapse? If they loved you, would they want their memory to become a prison? For most loving parents, the answer is obvious. A mother does not spend years raising a child so that the child can stop living when she dies. A father does not sacrifice his strength so that his son or daughter can surrender theirs at his funeral. This is why continuing your life can become one of the deepest forms of respect, not because the loss does not matter, because the life they helped build still matters. You are part of what remains. If your mother gave you courage, then using that courage after she is gone honors her more deeply than refusing to stand again. If your father taught you responsibility, then becoming more responsible after his death carries his teaching forward. If they gave you love, then allowing that love to reach others prevents death from becoming the final result of their existence. This is how grief becomes dharma. The pain does not disappear, but it receives direction. Instead of asking only, how can I survive without them? You begin asking, what did they place inside me that I am now responsible for carrying? That question changes everything. Suppose your mother was the emotional center of the family. After she dies, everyone becomes disconnected because nobody knows how to hold the relationships together the way she did. You could spend years saying, nothing will ever be the same, and that may be true. But perhaps another responsibility is also appearing. Someone now has to keep the family speaking, visiting, forgiving, and remembering. Maybe that person is you. Suppose your father handled every major responsibility, and after his death the family feels unstable. You may desperately wish he was still there to make decisions, but perhaps his absence is forcing the next generation to develop the strength he once carried for them. Death often changes roles without asking permission. The protected become protectors. The dependent become responsible. The younger generation suddenly becomes the elder generation, and this transition can feel terrifying. A man can be 60 years old and still feel that the world changed the moment his father died, because for the first time there is no one above him in the same way. A daughter can have a family of her own and still feel orphaned after losing her mother, because the person who knew her before anyone else is no longer there. These feelings are real, but they also reveal why release is necessary. Your parents' journey has changed. Your role must change too. You cannot continue being only the child waiting for them to guide every step. Eventually, some of what they gave you must become your own strength. This is one meaning of inheritance that has nothing to do with property. A father's courage becomes the son's courage. A mother's compassion becomes the daughter's compassion. A parent's discipline becomes the foundation of a grandchild's future. The body leaves, but qualities can remain in motion. This is far more powerful than keeping a room unchanged forever. Objects can preserve memory, but values preserve influence. And influence is one of the ways a life continues beyond the grave. This is why attachment to objects must also be understood carefully. After a parent dies, possessions can become emotionally charged. A shawl no longer looks like fabric, it feels like your mother. A walking stick does not feel like wood, it feels like your father. A cup, a pair of sandals, a prayer bead strand, an old book, or a chair may suddenly carry enormous emotional weight. There is nothing wrong with keeping meaningful objects. The problem begins when the mind believes that changing anything means erasing the person. Then the house itself becomes frozen. One room cannot be entered. One cupboard cannot be opened. Nothing can be moved because every movement feels like another death. But eventually, healing may require understanding that your parent does not exist inside these objects. The object carries memory. It does not contain the whole person. You can keep one thing with love and release another thing with gratitude. You can give your father's clothing to someone who needs it and allow that act itself to become remembrance. You can use your mother's belongings rather than preserving them as though time must stop. The deepest memory is not stored only in wood, cloth, metal, or photographs. It is stored in what the relationship made of you. This becomes even more important when guilt is mixed with attachment. Many children do not simply miss their parents, they punish themselves after death. They remember the day they were impatient, the argument they never repaired, the visit they postponed, the message they answered too late, the final conversation that now seems unbearable. And because the parent cannot physically hear an apology, the child begins believing the guilt must remain forever. But endless guilt does not honor your parents. It freezes you at the point of failure. Transformation does something greater. If you regret not listening to your mother, become someone who listens more deeply now. If you regret speaking harshly to your father, stop speaking harshly to those who remain. If you ignored advice that now makes sense, live by the wisdom you finally understand. You cannot travel backward and rewrite the old karma, but you can create new karma today. This is one of the most liberating truths in the entire teaching. The past is fixed. Your response is not. Regret can become poison, or it can become instruction. And perhaps the departed parent would be better honored by the lesson than by the poison. There are also situations where attachment is connected not with love alone, but with unresolved wounds. Not every parent-child relationship is peaceful. Some people lose a mother or father whom they deeply loved, but also deeply resented. The parent may have been emotionally distant, controlling, harsh, absent, or unable to give the kind of love the child needed. Then death creates a different type of grief. You are not only grieving the parent who existed, you are grieving the parent you hoped they would one day become. You are grieving an apology that will never come, a conversation that can no longer happen, a relationship that died unfinished. This can create an even stronger attachment because part of the mind continues arguing with the dead. Why did you never understand me? Why did you treat me that way? Why did you leave before we could fix this? In such cases, release does not mean pretending everything was beautiful. It means refusing to let the unresolved wound become the permanent center of your consciousness. You can honor what was good, name honestly what was painful, and decide that the injury will not continue through you forever. That is also a form of ancestral healing. Sometimes honoring your parents means continuing their wisdom. Sometimes it means ending their wounds. Both can be sacred. If anger passed from grandfather to father and then to child, perhaps your generation becomes the one that stops it. If fear moved through the maternal line for decades, perhaps you become the person who chooses courage. If silence ruled the household, Perhaps you learn to speak honestly with your own children. Then you are not betraying your parents. You are transforming the inheritance. This matters because ancestry is not only about what we receive proudly, it is also about what we receive unconsciously. A family may carry patterns for generations without understanding where they began. Death can make those patterns visible because the person who once held the family structure is no longer there. Old wounds rise, siblings begin fighting, property becomes a battlefield. Someone says, "Father promised this to me." Someone else says, "Mother loved me more." Grief becomes mixed with competition, and suddenly, the very parents being remembered become the reason the children stop speaking. This is one of the most tragic forms attachment can take. The children cling to possessions because the possessions feel like pieces of the parent. But in fighting over those pieces, they destroy the living relationships the parent may have valued most. If your mother's memory causes hatred between her children, something essential has been lost. If your father's property matters more than your father's values, inheritance has been misunderstood. Sometimes the most powerful ritual after a parent's death is reconciliation, not because every wound must be ignored, not because serious injustice should be hidden, but because many conflicts are sustained only by pride, and death exposes how temporary pride is. One day, the brother you refuse to speak to will also die. One day, the sister you resent will also become a memory. Then the same regret begins again. Death is severe because it removes the fantasy that there will always be another chance. This is why grief should awaken the living. If your parents are gone, look at the people still here, call them, forgive what can be forgiven. Say what needs to be said. Do not create the next regret while still mourning the previous one. This is Dharma born from loss. And perhaps this is one reason the Vedic path places such importance on awareness of impermanence. Nothing embodied remains forever. Not parents, not children, not homes, not wealth, not youth, not even the body through which you are reading these words. Everything changes. Everything moves. Attachment suffers because it demands stillness from a universe built on change. Love becomes wiser when it understands change without becoming indifferent. This is subtle. Detachment in spiritual teaching does not mean that you stop caring. It means you stop demanding ownership. You can love deeply and still know that the person is not yours forever. In fact, knowing this can make love more intense while the person is alive. If your mother is still here, you listen differently when you remember that her voice is temporary. If your father is still here, an ordinary cup of tea becomes different when you realize there will be a last one someday. Impermanence does not make life meaningless. It makes ordinary moments sacred. The tragedy is that most people understand this only after death. They would give anything for one more boring conversation they once ignored, one more complaint they used to find annoying, one more family dinner, one more voice asking where they are. The things we take for granted often become the things grief longs for most. So if your parents are alive, do not wait for spiritual wisdom to become funeral wisdom. Practice release even now, not by abandoning them, by loving without assuming tomorrow is guaranteed. Tell them what matters. Ask the questions. Resolve what can be resolved. Express gratitude. Because the final lesson after death is much harder when the important things were never spoken during life. And if your parents have already died, then release becomes different. You cannot speak physically, but you can still alter what their memory does within you. You can stop replaying only the final day. You can remember the whole life. This is crucial because trauma has a strange power. It can make the death larger than the person. Your mother may have lived 70 years, but your mind remembers only the final week in bed. Your father may have laughed with you for decades, but your mind sees only the funeral fire. Healing begins when memory expands again. Remember them healthy. Remember them young. Remember their mistakes. Remember their humor. Remember what irritated you. Remember what protected you. Remember them as a complete human being, not merely as someone who died. Then the parent returns to memory in a fuller form, and something remarkable happens. You may laugh. At first, the laughter may frighten you. How can you laugh while speaking about someone who died? Because love contained laughter before death. Why should death be allowed to erase it? A family telling stories about a departed parent and laughing together is not disrespecting the dead. They may finally be remembering the life instead of only the loss. This is where grief begins changing from an open wound into a scar. A scar is not absence of injury, it is evidence that something painful happened and the body learned to carry it. Grief can become like that. The parent remains important. The absence remains real. But the memory no longer destroys the entire day every time it appears. And this is not betrayal, it is integration. You are learning to carry them without being crushed by them. Perhaps this is the deepest meaning of letting go. You are not letting go of your mother. You are letting go of the demand that she must still be physically here. You are not letting go of your father. You are letting go of the belief that your life cannot continue because his ended. You are not letting go of love. You are letting go of possession. This difference is enormous. Love can cross change. Possession cannot. The parent may move into whatever spiritual journey lies beyond, while you remain here carrying memory, dharma, and responsibility. Two paths have separated, but separation does not erase what was shared. Imagine two travelers walking together for many years. They cross forests, survive storms, share food, protect one another, and one day reach a place where the road divides. One must continue east, the other must continue west. They can stand at the crossroads forever crying that the road should not divide, or they can recognize that everything they shared now travels with them in different directions. Your relationship with your parents is similar. For a time, the roads overlapped. Their path included raising you. Your path included learning from them. Then death creates the separation. The roads are no longer physically shared, but the journey together was not meaningless simply because it ended. It became part of both travelers. And now the question becomes what you do at the crossroads. Do you remain there forever? Or do you eventually turn toward the road still open before you? This is where the living must become brave. Your parents cannot walk your remaining road for you. There may be years left, children to raise, people to help, lessons to learn, mistakes to correct, service to perform, a life still asking something from you. If you remain permanently at the place of loss, you may unintentionally neglect the people whose relationship with you is still alive. A grieving mother may become so consumed by losing her own parent that her children stop receiving her attention. A son may become so lost after his father dies that his spouse and family become emotionally abandoned. This does not happen because the mourner is selfish. It happens because pain can narrow consciousness. But Dharma gradually widens it again. It says, "Honor the dead, but do not forget the living." That sentence is essential. The people who are still here need love now. One day they too will be gone. If death teaches anything, it should teach you not to postpone presence. So love your parents after death through remembrance. But love your living family through presence. Do not sacrifice one to the other. And if the idea of the soul's onward journey is taken seriously, then perhaps this balance becomes even more meaningful. Your parents have their path. You have yours. The greatest spiritual respect may be to allow both journeys to continue. You do not have to pull their souls backward with the demand, "Remain with me because I am afraid." You can gradually offer something more peaceful. "I miss you, but I bless your journey. I wish you were here, but I will not make my life a punishment because you are gone. I remember you, but I will not turn memory into a chain. I will carry what was good in you forward." These are difficult sentences. They may take years before the heart can say them sincerely. There is no need to force them, but eventually they represent a profound transformation. Grief begins by saying, come back. Wisdom eventually learns to say, go in peace, and between those two sentences lies the entire spiritual journey of mourning. That journey does not erase your parents, it changes the way you carry them. At first, you carry them as absence, later, perhaps as gratitude. At first, their name hurts. Later, the same name can warm the heart. At first, every memory says, they are gone. Later, some memories begin saying, how fortunate that they were here at all. That is not forgetting, that is grief becoming mature. And perhaps this is the point where ancestral remembrance becomes truly sacred, because the parent is no longer being held only inside the moment of death. They are being placed within the larger story of the family. Their life becomes teaching. Their mistakes become warnings. Their virtues become inheritance. Their love becomes responsibility. Their death becomes a reminder of impermanence, and the child slowly becomes the next keeper of the lineage. This is why loving your mother and father does not mean refusing to let them go. The deepest love may eventually require the opposite. It may require enough faith to stop demanding physical return, enough gratitude to stop measuring the relationship only by what was lost, enough courage to live, enough wisdom to heal, enough humility to recognize that the soul belongs to a journey larger than your need. You can carry their memory without carrying the demand that they remain. You can speak their name without calling them backward. You can cry without turning tears into a permanent home. And one day, when the grief is ready, you may discover that your hands have opened. They are no longer trying to hold what cannot be held. And because they are open, those hands can finally give again. They can feed someone, comfort someone, raise a child, care for an elder, build what your parents hoped you would build, heal what they could not heal, serve the world with the values they placed inside you. That may be the most beautiful form of release. Your parents continue their journey, and through you, something good from their earthly life continues its journey too. But this leads to an even deeper teaching, because when the hands finally stop clinging, the question changes completely. Instead of asking only how to let your mother and father go, you begin asking what part of them has already become part of you, what survives through memory, character, lineage, and the generations that follow. And that is where the next lesson opens the mystery of how your parents become part of the ancestral memory still living through you. Lesson 6. Your parents become part of the ancestral memory living through you. There comes a stage in grief when something inside you begins to change, because in the beginning the mind remembers almost nothing except the fact that your mother or father died. The final illness becomes larger than all the healthy years that came before it. The funeral becomes larger than every celebration you once shared, and the last conversation becomes more powerful than thousands of ordinary conversations that built the relationship over decades. Death is so shocking that it can temporarily cover the entire life, and for a time the person you loved is remembered mainly through the moment you lost them. But slowly, if grief is allowed to heal rather than become a permanent prison, the person begins returning to memory in a different form. You remember your mother laughing. You remember how she called you from another room. You remember the meal she prepared so often that you once stopped noticing it. You remember her anger, her worries, her advice, the way she folded clothes, the prayers she whispered, the stories she repeated, and all the ordinary things that seemed unimportant because you assumed they would happen again. You remember your father before age weakened him. You remember his strength. You remember the way he sat after a long day. You remember the advice you ignored when you were younger and suddenly understand now. You remember his mistakes too, because real remembrance does not require making a parent perfect after death. And something profound happens when these memories return. Your parent is no longer only the person who died. They become again the person who lived. This transformation matters deeply because the Vedic and broader Hindu understanding of ancestry is not built only around death. It is built around continuity. The departed gradually becomes part of the line of those who came before, and their influence continues within the family through memory, values, habits, teachings, duties, and the patterns passed from one generation to the next. This is where the idea of the Pitrs, the ancestors, becomes much more personal. When people hear the word ancestor, they often imagine someone from hundreds of years ago whose name is barely remembered, but every ancient ancestor was once someone's mother, someone's father, someone's husband, someone's wife, someone's child. They once sat at ordinary tables, worried about ordinary problems, made mistakes, loved their families, and lived days they believed were simply life. Then time passed. The familiar person became memory. Memory became tradition. Tradition became ancestry. Your mother and father are part of that same movement. At first, this can be difficult to accept because they may feel too close to become ancestors. You may still know exactly where your father's sandals were kept or how your mother arranged her belongings, and the idea of placing them among distant generations can seem almost wrong. But this is how every ancestral line is formed, not through strangers becoming sacred, but through familiar people gradually passing beyond everyday presence, and yet they do not disappear from the family. They change their place within it. While alive, your mother may have guided you directly. After death, her guidance may continue through what you remember. While alive, your father may have corrected your choices. After death, there may come a moment when you are about to make a mistake and suddenly hear one of his old warnings inside your mind. He is not physically speaking, but the influence remains. This is one of the simplest and most powerful ways a parent survives within the life of a child. You may be speaking to your own son one day and suddenly realize that the sentence coming out of your mouth is exactly something your father used to say to you. You may be comforting your daughter and recognize your mother's tenderness in the way you hold her. You may prepare food and notice your hands moving in the same pattern you watched your mother use hundreds of times. You may respond to danger with a courage you learned from watching your father remain steady during difficult years. These things often happen without conscious effort. They reveal that parents give children far more than possessions. They give patterns of being. Some enter so deeply that the child does not recognize them until the parent is gone. This is why the question, "Where did my mother and father go?" has more than one dimension. Spiritually, according to the Vedic worldview, the soul continues according to a journey beyond the physical body. But here, in the visible world, part of their earthly influence continues through you. You are one of the places where their life still has consequences. This does not mean you become your parents. Your soul is your own. Your karma is your own. Your choices remain yours. But the material from which you build those choices has been shaped partly by those who raised you. This is ancestral inheritance, and it includes both light and shadow. Your mother may have given you compassion, but she may also have passed on fear. Your father may have given you discipline, but perhaps he also carried anger. A family may inherit courage, generosity, devotion, and resilience, while also passing down silence, pride, anxiety, resentment, or patterns of conflict that nobody knows how to stop. And this is where ancestral remembrance becomes more demanding than simple nostalgia. You must ask, what deserves to continue through me, and what should end with me? This question can become one of the greatest acts of respect toward your parents. If your mother was exceptionally generous, let that generosity travel farther through you. If your father was honest even when honesty cost him something, preserve that integrity. If they taught prayer, discipline, hospitality, patience, courage, or service, do not allow those qualities to die merely because their bodies died. But if they carried a wound that harmed the family, you are not required to pass that wound forward in order to remain loyal. Suppose your father loved you, but never learned how to show affection because his own father never showed it to him. You may understand where the pattern came from while still deciding that your own children will hear the words, "I love you." Then something that traveled through generations stops with you. Suppose your mother lived constantly in fear because of everything she endured, and that fear entered you as a child. You may honor her suffering without allowing fear to become your destiny. You can become courageous. Then the ancestral story changes. This is powerful because people sometimes misunderstand honoring parents as copying everything they did. But real respect is more intelligent than imitation. You preserve wisdom. You transform suffering. You continue goodness. You interrupt harm. That is how a lineage evolves. And this may be one of the deepest ways your parents remain connected to the future after death, because what they gave you will not stop with you unless you choose for it to stop. Imagine a mother who taught compassion to her daughter. Years after the mother's death, the daughter sees someone in distress and decides to help because compassion has become part of her character. The stranger never knew the mother and may never even hear her name, yet something that lived in that mother has now touched another human being. Then perhaps the daughter teaches compassion to her own child. One day that child helps someone else. The original mother has been gone for decades, but the moral consequence of her life is still moving. How far can such influence travel? No one knows. A small kindness performed today may have begun generations ago. A sentence your father told you may shape the way you raise a child who will one day shape another person. An ancestor whose name has disappeared from family memory may still influence your behavior through patterns transmitted across generations. This is why ancestry is mysterious. The visible person leaves, the consequences remain, and suddenly the Vedic idea that human beings stand within a chain of generations becomes something you can actually observe in daily life. Look at your own hands. Perhaps they resemble your father's. Look at an expression you make when frustrated. Perhaps your children tell you that you look exactly like your mother, but the inheritance is deeper than physical resemblance. Maybe your patience came from watching someone endure. Maybe your determination came from seeing your parents survive hardship. Maybe your attitude toward money, family, hospitality, education, work, faith, or responsibility was shaped before you were old enough to question it. You carry ancestry constantly. Death simply makes you more aware of it. This realization can bring a new kind of grief, because you may suddenly notice things you never appreciated while your parents were alive. You remember advice you used to dismiss and now understand the wisdom inside it. You remember sacrifices you once considered ordinary. You realize how much effort was hidden behind the stability you enjoyed. Perhaps you discover that your mother went without certain things so you could have them. Perhaps you understand that your father's silence was not indifference but exhaustion. Sometimes we understand our parents only after becoming parents ourselves, and sometimes we understand them only after they die. This can hurt because gratitude arrives when the person is no longer physically present to hear it. But gratitude does not have to become another form of guilt. It can become a way of living. If you suddenly understand what your parents gave you, use that understanding. Do not spend the next 20 years only saying, "I wish I had thanked them." Become the gratitude. Let it change the way you treat your own family. Let it change how carefully you use the opportunities their sacrifices helped create. Let it make you less entitled. Let it deepen your respect for the hidden sacrifices other people make. Then the realization is not wasted. This is another way grief becomes wisdom. A painful truth arrives too late for one relationship, but it can arrive in time to improve another. And this is why the death of parents often changes how a person sees the remaining elders of the family. Suddenly an uncle's stories are not boring. A grandmother's memories become valuable. An old family tradition becomes something worth preserving. You realize that when an elder dies, a library can disappear with them. Stories vanish, names vanish, details of family history vanish. The younger generation often does not realize what has been lost until there is nobody left to ask. This is where remembrance can become a responsibility. Ask the elders while they are here. Listen, remember, pass on what deserves to be passed on. Not because every old tradition must be preserved blindly, but because a family without memory loses part of its understanding of where it came from. The ancient reverence toward ancestors reflects this awareness. You are not self-created. You stand upon lives you did not witness. Some suffered so you could inherit opportunities they never possessed. Some made mistakes whose consequences you still carry. Some created strengths that protected the family. Some wounds may still be waiting for someone conscious enough to heal them, and now you stand in the middle. Behind you are your parents and ancestors. Ahead may be children, grandchildren, students, relatives, or people you will influence without realizing it. You are receiving and transmitting at the same time. This is why the way you live after your parents die becomes so important. You are no longer only their child. In some sense, you become a keeper of what remains. What story will you tell about them? Will you remember only their failures? Will you pretend they had none? Neither extreme is wise. True ancestral memory is honest. You can say, "My father was a strong man, but he struggled with anger." You can say, my mother loved deeply, but fear limited her." You can honor people as human beings, rather than turning them into flawless statues after death. This honesty is important because future generations need wisdom, not mythology. If every family hides every mistake, the same mistakes return. But when the past is remembered honestly, descendants can learn. You can say, "This is what they did beautifully, preserve it." And also, "This caused pain, do not repeat it." Then even the mistakes of the departed can become useful teachers. This may be difficult when a parent caused deep wounds, because some children feel pressured to praise the dead in ways that deny their own experience. But death does not rewrite history. You can acknowledge the soul's journey while also acknowledging the truth of what happened in the family. Forgiveness, if it comes, does not require pretending there was no injury. Healing does not require false memory. You can release resentment while preserving wisdom. And sometimes the greatest ancestral offering is ending the cycle that wounded both the parent and the child. Perhaps your father was harsh because his father was harsher. Perhaps your mother controlled everything because fear controlled her. Understanding the source does not excuse the harm, but it can reveal the chain. And once you see the chain, you can choose not to become another link. This is where your life becomes powerful. You are not only inheriting ancestry, you are editing what ancestry will mean for the next generation. Some things you strengthen, some you soften, some you end, some you begin, and one day you too will become part of someone's ancestral memory. That thought should change how you live. One day, perhaps, someone will describe you the way you now describe your mother and father. What will they say? Will they say you carried bitterness from your parents and passed it onward, or that you received pain and transformed it into wisdom? Will they say you inherited compassion and multiplied it? Will they say you kept the family together? Will they say you healed something that had been broken for generations? This is not about creating a perfect legacy. Nobody does. It is about living consciously enough to understand that your choices do not stop with you. This is karma working through relationship and consequence. And perhaps this gives us another way to answer what happens to your mother and father after death. They do not remain physically at the family table. They do not continue performing the same household roles, but the life they lived has already entered the stream of cause and effect. Their influence moves through memory. Their virtues may become your virtues. Their wounds may become your work. Their teachings may become the foundation of another generation. Their stories may become part of the family's identity. And spiritually, they move beyond the visible form into the mystery of the soul's own journey. Two continuities happen at once. The soul continues beyond the body. The earthly influence continues through those left behind. This can make grief feel different. You no longer need to imagine that keeping your parents alive in memory requires constantly reopening the wound. You can carry them more quietly. A tree does not repeatedly dig up its roots in order to prove that the roots matter. The roots matter because they are already inside the life of the tree. In the same way, your parents may eventually become part of you so deeply that you do not need to think consciously about them every hour in order for their influence to remain. One day you may realize you have gone an entire morning without thinking about your father. Do not panic. You did not erase him. One day your mother's birthday may arrive, and you may feel peaceful rather than devastated. Do not feel guilty. You did not stop loving her. Healing changes the intensity of grief, not the historical reality of love. There is an enormous difference between forgetting and integrating. Forgetting says, this no longer matters. Integration says, this matters so deeply that I no longer need to bleed every time I remember it. This is where remembrance becomes mature. The parent moves from being an open wound to becoming part of the inner structure of who you are. And then something beautiful happens. You can speak about them without speaking only about death. Children who never met them can hear stories that contain laughter. You can say, your grandfather used to do this, or your grandmother always said that. And suddenly the departed enters another generation through story. A child smiles at a person they never met. An old life touches a new life. This is ancestry becoming visible. Perhaps this is why stories matter so much. An object can be lost, a photograph can fade, a house can be sold, but a story told with love can travel through generations. Tell the stories, not only the dramatic ones. Tell the ordinary stories too. How your father once failed terribly and tried again. How your mother laughed until she cried. How they met hardship. What frightened them. What made them strong. Let descendants know they came from human beings, not perfect statues. This gives the ancestors life within memory while still allowing the soul to move forward. And this balance is essential. Remember without pulling backward. Honor without imprisoning. Preserve without refusing change. This is the mature relationship between the living and the ancestors. The family does not keep the departed trapped in yesterday. It carries yesterday's wisdom into tomorrow. And if you look carefully, you may realize that this has already been happening all your life. You are carrying words spoken by people who are gone. You are repeating habits older than you. You are living consequences created before you were born. And one day, someone may carry something from you after you are gone. This is why death should make us more responsible, not less. Because your life is already becoming someone else's inheritance. Every time you choose patience instead of anger, perhaps you are changing what the next generation receives. Every time you forgive where pride ruled before, perhaps you are changing the ancestral story. Every time you protect a valuable tradition, you keep wisdom alive. Every time you end a harmful pattern, you create freedom for someone who may never know how hard the change was. Then your parents' death does not become only an ending. It becomes a point of transfer. Their hands release what they carried. Your hands receive part of it. And the question becomes, what will you do with it? Will you simply repeat the past? Or will you carry its wisdom forward while transforming its pain? This is one of the deepest responsibilities of a child who becomes the next generation of elders. Your mother and father may no longer be walking beside you physically, but eventually you realize that part of their work has moved into your hands. The family they cared about is now partly your responsibility. The values they tried to protect may now depend on you. The wounds they could not heal may now be visible enough for you to heal. The younger generation may now look toward you the way you once looked toward them. That moment can be frightening, but it can also be sacred, because you are no longer simply mourning your place in the old family structure. You are stepping into the next place in the lineage. And perhaps this is the natural movement of life that the idea of ancestors has always been trying to show us. Parents become ancestors. Children become elders. Memories become teachings. Teachings become character. Character becomes the inheritance of those who come next. The river keeps moving, and yet one final question remains, because eventually even ancestral memory must coexist with release. You cannot spend the rest of your life looking only backward, no matter how deeply you loved your mother and father. Their earthly influence can remain inside you, but your own life is still moving toward its future. So after you have remembered, honored, healed, and understood what your parents placed inside you, there comes one final spiritual responsibilities. You must turn toward your own path and carry their love forward without allowing their absence to stop your life. And that is where the seventh and final lesson begins. Lesson 7. Carry their love forward, but do not stop your own life. There comes a final stage in the journey of grief when the question changes completely, because in the beginning all you want to know is where your mother or father has gone, whether the soul continues, whether the ancestors receive them, whether karma shapes what comes next, and whether your prayers and remembrance still matter. But after enough time passes and enough tears have been shed, another question quietly begins to rise from beneath all the others. What are you supposed to do with the life that still remains in your hands? This question can be harder than everything that came before it, because while your parents were alive, your own life was partly organized around their existence. Even when you lived far away, even when you had your own family, your own work, your own children, your own responsibilities, some invisible part of the world still felt stable simply because they were there. Your mother existed somewhere, your father existed somewhere, and that fact gave your life a structure you may never have fully noticed until it disappeared. Then one day, the structure changes. The person you used to call for advice is no longer available. The person whose blessing you once sought cannot physically respond. The one who remembered your childhood is gone. The one who knew the family history better than you did is gone. And suddenly the child, no matter how old, has to face a terrifying truth. The road ahead is now yours to walk without them physically beside you. This is where many people become stuck. Not because they do not understand death, but because they do not know how to continue after it. They feel that moving forward is betrayal. They feel that laughing again is betrayal. They feel that planning the future is betrayal. They feel that enjoying life is betrayal. Sometimes even healing itself feels wrong, because pain becomes the final proof of love. But this is one of the deepest misunderstandings grief can create. Love is not measured by how long you remain broken. A person can be devastated and still love deeply. A person can heal and still love deeply. A person can smile again and still carry the memory of a parent forever. The Vedic path does not glorify endless emotional suffering as the highest form of devotion. It continually points toward awareness, dharma, right action, understanding, and the transformation of attachment into wisdom. So eventually, grief must become something that can stand beside life rather than replace it. This does not happen because you stop missing your parents. It happens because you finally understand that your life is still carrying duties they can no longer perform for you. There are people who still need you. There are responsibilities still waiting. There are relationships that still require your presence. There is knowledge still to be learned. There are wrongs still to be corrected. There may be children who need guidance, a spouse who needs love, siblings who need unity, elders who still need care, and a future that will not build itself simply because your heart has been wounded. This is where Dharma becomes deeply personal. Dharma is not only a philosophical idea written in ancient texts. Sometimes Dharma is waking up and doing what must be done after the person who once gave you strength is gone. Sometimes Dharma is becoming strong because your father can no longer be strong for the family. Sometimes Dharma is becoming nurturing because your mother can no longer hold everyone together. Sometimes Dharma is refusing to allow a family to collapse merely because the person who once united it has died. This can feel unfair, and perhaps it is not supposed to feel fair. Loss often transfers responsibility without asking whether you are ready. A son who always relied on his father's judgment suddenly has to make decisions. A daughter who always went to her mother for comfort suddenly becomes the person younger relatives call for comfort. The family structure changes, and what once flowed downward from parent to child now begins flowing forward through you. This is how ancestry becomes living responsibility. Your parents do not simply become people you remember. They become part of what you are now expected to carry. But there is a danger here too. You can honor what they carried without becoming trapped by it. Some people feel that they must live exactly as their parents lived in order to remain loyal. They follow every expectation, repeat every pattern, keep every tradition, accept every wound, and they call this respect. But respect without discernment can become another form of attachment. Your mother and father were human beings. They were not the final expression of wisdom. They had strengths and limitations. They understood some things deeply and misunderstood others. They carried the conditioning of their own time, family, fears and experiences. So the highest way to carry them forward is not blind repetition. It is intelligent continuation. Preserve what was good, heal what was harmful, strengthen what was weak, complete what remained unfinished, and do not allow loyalty to the dead to become disloyalty to your own dharma. This is especially important when parents had powerful expectations for the child. A father may have wanted one profession. A mother may have imagined one kind of marriage. The family may have carried one definition of success. After death, some children continue obeying these expectations long after they know the path no longer belongs to them, because changing direction feels like disappointing the parent who is no longer present. But ask yourself whether your purpose in life is to become a monument to someone else's expectations or to become the most conscious version of the life you were given. There is a difference between honoring your parents and living a life that never becomes your own. The Vedic tradition places great value on dharma precisely because each person must act according to the responsibilities and truth of their own position in life. Your parents brought you into the world. They shaped you. They influenced you. But eventually, your consciousness must mature enough to carry gratitude without surrendering all independent discernment. This is part of growing beyond grief. At first you ask, what would my father tell me to do? Later, perhaps you ask, what did he teach me about how to decide for myself? At first you ask, what would my mother want? Later, perhaps you ask, what values did she place inside me that can help me choose wisely now? This is a more mature continuation of their influence. You are not waiting for their voice. You are using what they taught you to develop your own. And one day, perhaps without noticing, you become the person someone else calls for guidance. This is how the lineage moves. The child becomes the elder. The one who received advice becomes the one who gives it. The one who was protected becomes the protector. The one who was taught becomes the teacher. And this transition is one of the clearest signs that life is moving forward, even when grief wishes it could remain still. There is another reason this final lesson matters so much. Many people idealize their parents after death. They remember only the best moments. They turn every memory into a sacred image. They remove the flaws because the person is no longer alive to defend themselves or explain them. This may feel respectful, but it can create another problem. If the departed parent becomes perfect in memory, the living child can never match that image. You may start comparing yourself constantly to an idealized version of your father. You may think, he was stronger than me. She was more patient than me. They handled everything better. But memory is selective. Your parents struggled too. They doubted themselves. They made mistakes. They were frightened. They failed. They had days when they had no idea what to do. You may not have seen all of it because children rarely see the complete inner life of a parent. So do not turn grief into self-comparison. You are not supposed to become a copy of them. You are supposed to take what they gave you and become responsible for your own life. That is the continuation. not imitation, not worship, not denial of your own path. Continuation means the goodness travels forward through a new form. This is why the death of parents can become one of the greatest turning points in a person's spiritual life. Before loss, impermanence is an idea. After loss, impermanence has a face. Before loss, you know intellectually that everyone dies. After loss, you understand what those words actually mean. Before loss, you postpone conversations because tomorrow seems guaranteed. After loss, you know there may be no tomorrow. This realization can make a person either afraid of life or awake to life. The choice matters. Some people become afraid to love deeply after losing parents. They think, if I love again, I will eventually lose again. So they protect themselves through emotional distance. But this is another way death can take more than one person. The parent dies physically. Then fear kills the child's ability to love. Ancient wisdom would not call this liberation. Attachment to avoiding pain is still attachment. The deeper lesson is not to stop loving because love is temporary. It is to love more consciously because it is temporary. This is where death becomes one of life's greatest teachers. If your mother is alive, you cannot know exactly how many conversations remain. If your father is alive, you do not know how many times you will see him again. If they are already gone, then you know precisely how valuable those ordinary moments were, because you would now give anything for one more. This should change how you treat the living. Call the person, visit, sit longer, listen more carefully. Do not rush through the meal. Do not treat affection as something that can always be expressed later. Do not make pride more important than time. One of the deepest tragedies after a parent's death is hearing someone say, "I thought I had more time." Almost everyone thinks that. Life rarely announces the final ordinary moment. The last conversation usually does not feel like the last. The final meal often looks like every other meal. The final goodbye may be casual. That is why awareness matters. You do not need to live terrified that every moment may be the final one. But you can live with enough consciousness to stop wasting the moments you already know are temporary. This is the spiritual gift hidden inside grief. It can teach you how to be present before the next loss comes. And this teaching goes even deeper. One day, your children may stand where you now stand. One day, someone may ask what happened to you after death. One day, your photograph may sit where your parents' photograph sits now. One day, people may tell stories about the way you lived. This is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to wake you. Because if you know that one day you will become an ancestor too, then the question becomes, what are you leaving behind? Not only money, not only property, not only a name. What pattern are you leaving? What emotional inheritance? What spiritual inheritance? What will your children carry because you lived? Will they inherit your unresolved anger, your fear, your silence? Or will they inherit courage, clarity, compassion, responsibility? The way you live now is already becoming someone else's memory. This should make the death of your parents deeply instructive. You know what it feels like to remember a parent. You know what words remain. You know what wounds remain. You know what kindness remains. So you have an opportunity to live more consciously for those who may one day remember you. This is not about creating a perfect legacy. No one can. It is about understanding that your life has consequences beyond your immediate comfort. Your parents taught you this simply by dying. Their influence continues, so will yours. This is one of the most Vedic ways of understanding lineage. Life is not isolated, it flows. Cause becomes effect. Effect becomes another cause. Action becomes memory. Memory becomes influence. Influence becomes action in another person. This is why karma is not only about what happens to you, it is also about what continues because of you. And this brings us back to your mother and father. When they died, they left more than absence. They left unfinished effects. Some are beautiful, some painful, some visible, some hidden. You inherited part of that field. Now you are responsible for what happens next. If there was love, multiply it. If there was wisdom, preserve it. If there was suffering, learn from it. If there was conflict, do not automatically continue it. If there was generosity, let it travel farther. If there was fear, become the place where courage begins. This is how you carry parents forward without becoming imprisoned by the past. And perhaps this is what the final release truly means. You stop asking them to return physically. You stop asking the past to become the present again. You stop measuring love only through pain. You accept that the road has divided. They have moved into the mystery beyond death. You remain in the world of action, and because you remain here, action is still your responsibility. There is something profoundly sacred about this division. The departed enters silence. The living must act. The departed becomes memory. The living becomes the carrier. The departed cannot change what happened. The living can change what happens next. This should give you strength. You may feel powerless before death, but you are not powerless before life. You cannot bring your mother back, but you can become more loving because she existed. You cannot ask your father one more question, but you can live by the wisdom you already received. You cannot repair yesterday, but you can stop creating tomorrow's regret. This is freedom born from grief. And perhaps this is why release is not the end of the relationship. It is the beginning of a different relationship. At first, the parent is outside you. You see them, hear them, speak to them. Later, the parent becomes inward. You remember, interpret, carry. Sometimes you make a decision and think, my father would have understood this. Sometimes you face difficulty and think, my mother survived worse. The relationship becomes quieter, less physical, less dependent on constant memory, but not necessarily less meaningful. In fact, sometimes it becomes clearer. While parents are alive, the relationship can be mixed with irritation, expectation, habit, dependency, conflict, and routine. After death, some of that noise disappears, and slowly you begin seeing the deeper gifts. You understand what they gave, what they failed to give, what you must continue, what you must release. The relationship becomes less about daily interaction and more about meaning. This is where gratitude begins to become stronger than loss, not because loss disappears, but because the mind finally sees the full picture. There may come a day when you say your mother's name and the first feeling is warmth. There may come a day when you remember your father and the first image is his smile rather than his funeral. There may come a day when you visit a sacred place, perform remembrance, or simply sit quietly and feel no need to ask, why did you leave? Instead, another sentence arrives. Thank you for being here as long as you were. That sentence marks a profound transformation. Grief has moved from protest to gratitude. This does not mean you wanted them to die. It means you have stopped arguing with the fact that they did. And once resistance becomes smaller, love can become cleaner. You no longer need pain to prove the bond. You no longer need to replay the death to remember the life. You no longer need every object to remain untouched. You no longer need to stop yourself from being happy. This is where the departed parent becomes ancestor in the deepest sense. Not merely because time has passed, but because the relationship has moved from physical dependence into sacred memory. They become part of the foundation behind you, and you turn toward the future. This is not abandonment. A tree does not betray its roots by growing upward. It honors them. The roots exist so the tree can continue living. In the same way, your parents did not bring you into this world so you could remain emotionally buried with them after they leave it. If they gave you life, the continuation of that life is one of the greatest forms of gratitude. Use it. Do not waste it. This is especially important when the child feels guilty for succeeding after the parent has died. A son achieves something his father always wanted to see and immediately feels pain because the father is not there. A daughter experiences joy and wishes her mother could share it. These moments can be bittersweet, but do not allow absence to destroy the achievement. Let the moment contain both truths. I wish you were here, and I am grateful I made it. The heart can hold both. Spiritual maturity is often the ability to hold two truths that grief wants to separate. You can miss someone and still be joyful. You can grieve and still be grateful. You can carry the past and still build the future. You can honor the dead and still love the living. You can believe in the soul's journey while admitting mystery. These things do not cancel one another. They belong together. This is the balance the final lesson asks you to find. And perhaps one of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that healing has an ending. There may never be a day when you finish missing your parents. A festival may reopen the wound. A smell may bring your mother back into memory. A phrase may suddenly sound exactly like your father. A grandchild may ask a question that makes you cry. This does not mean healing failed. It means love has depth. The purpose is not to eliminate every wave of grief. It is to stop drowning every time a wave arrives. That is a much more realistic form of peace. One day grief comes, but it no longer controls the whole life. You sit with it, you remember. You cry if you need to. Then you continue. This is strength. And perhaps this is the kind of strength your parents wanted for you, even while they were alive. Most loving parents do not want children permanently dependent on them. They want children capable of standing, capable of deciding, capable of surviving, capable of carrying the family after they are gone. So when you stand again after their death, you are not moving away from them. You may actually be fulfilling something they spent their entire life preparing you to do. This is why the final gift to your mother and father is not endless grief. It is conscious continuation. Carry their love forward. Carry their wisdom forward. Carry their blessings forward if that language speaks to your tradition. Carry the lessons from their mistakes forward. Carry gratitude, but do not carry every fear. Do not carry every wound. Do not carry every unfinished argument as though it must become your identity. Travel lighter because your road is still long. And one day, someone else will inherit what you choose to carry. This is the generational responsibility. Your parents passed something into your hands. You will pass something into another pair of hands. So choose carefully. Do not pass down bitterness simply because you inherited it. Do not pass down emotional silence because your father never learned to speak. Do not pass down fear because your mother was afraid. Let consciousness intervene. Let wisdom change the inheritance. This is how one generation can bless another. And perhaps this is the deepest form of ancestral honor, not merely remembering those who came before, but becoming wiser because they came before. Your mother and father may have completed their earthly journey, but you can make their existence continue to produce something meaningful. You can become more awake, more compassionate, more responsible, more truthful. Then their life still has movement in this world, and eventually you may reach a place where you no longer ask where they are every night. The question softens. You trust the mystery more. You become less desperate for certainty. You stop needing to prove whether they can see you, hear you, or know what you are doing. Instead, you begin living according to a simpler principle. If they could see me, I would want them to see me living well. That sentence can become a powerful guide. If your mother could see your life, what would you want her to see? Would you want her to see you broken forever, or see you using the love she gave? If your father could see the family, what would you want him to see? Division, or strength, waste, or responsibility, fear, or courage? You cannot control whether such seeing is possible, but you can control the life being lived, and that is enough. This brings the entire teaching full circle. We began by asking what happens to your mother and father after death. The Vedic vision points us toward the continuing soul, toward karma, toward Yama, toward the Pitrs, toward ancestral remembrance, and toward the sacred responsibilities of the living. But the deepest lesson is not only about them, it is about you. Death reveals what love really was. It reveals what remains. It reveals what must change. It reveals what cannot be held forever. And eventually, it asks whether you can transform loss into wisdom. This is the test. Not whether you can avoid tears, not whether you can forget, but whether you can remember without being destroyed by memory, whether you can love without demanding possession, whether you can honor the past without refusing the future, whether you can become worthy of what was handed to you. There may come a moment when you stand before the memory of your parents and finally say what grief could not say in the beginning. I wanted you to stay, but I understand now that no embodied life stays forever. I wanted more time, but I am grateful for the time we had. I wanted you to guide me longer, but I will try to use what you already taught me. I will not destroy the life you helped create, because your life has ended. I will remember you, honor you, learn from you, and then I will continue. That is not letting go of your parents. That is letting go of the demand that they remain physically present for your life to have meaning. And when that demand disappears, something beautiful becomes possible. You can carry them lightly, not as chains, as roots, not as wounds, as wisdom, not as absence, as inheritance. And this may be the final answer to what happens to your mother and father after death. Their visible presence ends. Their deeper journey continues according to the mysteries described by the ancient tradition. Their place in the family changes from parent to ancestor. Their karma remains their own. Their influence remains in the world, and you become one of the places where that influence continues. So live carefully, live consciously, love while there is time, forgive while there is someone to hear it. Listen while voices still answer. And when someone you love eventually crosses beyond your sight, do not believe that endless suffering is the only thing you can give them. Give gratitude, give remembrance, give prayer, give charity, give transformed action, give a life lived well. Because perhaps the greatest offering to the people who gave you life is to show that the life they gave was not wasted. Your mother may no longer hold your hand, your father may no longer walk beside you, but now the road is in front of you, and the final responsibility is yours. Carry their love forward, but do not stop your own life. Carry their wisdom forward, but do not repeat every wound. Carry their memory forward, but do not remain trapped in yesterday. Let them become part of your strength, and then walk. Because one day, you too will become someone's ancestor. And when that day comes, what will matter is not whether those who loved you stayed broken forever. What will matter is whether something good from your life continued through them. That is the circle. Parents become ancestors. Children become elders. Love becomes memory. Memory becomes wisdom. Wisdom becomes action. And action becomes the inheritance of another generation. The river continues, and the final spiritual maturity is not trying to stop the river. It is learning how to carry what is sacred, while allowing life to keep moving. One day, the voices of your mother and father may exist only in memory, but that does not mean their lives have become meaningless. The Vedic vision asks you to see death differently, not only as the moment a body becomes still, but as the point where one journey changes form and another responsibility begins in the hearts of those left behind. Your mother may no longer call your name. Your father may no longer sit where he always sat. The house may feel different. Festivals may feel emptier. And some days a single memory may still bring tears without warning. But grief is not asking you to erase them. It is asking you to learn how to carry them without allowing their absence to destroy the life they helped create. Remember what was good in them and let it continue through you. Remember what was painful and let wisdom stop it from passing into another generation. If they gave you love, give more love. If they gave you courage, Use it when life becomes difficult. If they made mistakes, allow those mistakes to teach you, rather than becoming another chain you unconsciously repeat. Because after your parents die, the most powerful question is no longer only, where did they go? It becomes, what did they leave inside me? Perhaps your mother left compassion that now appears in the way you care for your own family. Perhaps your father left strength that rises inside you during the exact moment you think you cannot continue. Perhaps a sentence they spoke years ago now makes sense in a way it never did while they were alive. This is how a life continues to have consequences. The body may return to the elements. The soul continues according to the ancient mystery of karma and the path beyond physical sight. The parent gradually becomes ancestor, but the influence remains here, moving through memory, character, family, and the choices of those who remain. So if your mother or father has already departed, do not spend the rest of your life believing that suffering is the only proof that you loved them. You can cry and still heal. You can miss them and still laugh again. You can remember them and still move forward. You can honor them without remaining trapped in the day they died. And when grief becomes heavy, perhaps close your eyes and say quietly within your heart, Mother, Father, I wish I had more time with you. I wish there were words I could still say and moments I could live again. But I am grateful that our paths met in this life. I will carry what was good in you forward. I will heal what should not continue. I will honor your memory without turning it into a prison. May your journey continue in peace, and may I have the strength to continue mine. And if your parents are still alive, let this teaching become more than something you hear and forget. Call them, sit with them. Listen to the stories you have already heard many times. Ask the questions you keep postponing. Say thank you while they can still hear it. Say I love you while there is still a voice that can answer. Do not wait until an empty chair teaches you the value of the person who once occupied it. Because one day, every parent becomes an ancestor, and one day every child becomes someone else's memory. The river does not stop. But while you are here, you still have a choice about what you place into it. So carry your parents with gratitude, not only grief. Carry their wisdom, not every wound. Carry their love forward, and allow your own life to keep moving. If this teaching touched your heart, share it with someone who has lost a mother or father, and subscribe to Akashic Vedas for more ancient teachings about the soul, karma, ancestors, death, rebirth, and the mysteries beyond this life. And until we meet again, may the ancestors be remembered with reverence. May those who grieve find strength, and may we learn to love the people beside us before time turns their presence into memory. Your mother and father may one day disappear from your sight, but what they place within you can continue long after their bodies are gone.